Welcome to Profit Sharing in the Real World. I'm your host, Danny Murphy. This podcast features commentary from Dick Erickson, founder of Sun Tire in North Florida and author of the book, Profit Sharing in the Real World, which is available at Amazon.com. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the role of managers in the profit sharing plan at Sun Tire. Dick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Danny. Good to be here.
Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about first was how did you develop managers at Sun Tire?
Well, what I had initially, I realized my pool of people for management and leadership in this type of industry was not as open because people who went off to college and all, generally speaking, were not attracted to the blue collar industry. And I had to learn that. I through, interviewing different folks. And when I'd say, what Saturdays we work Monday through Saturday night or, Monday through Saturday. And well, what Saturdays do I get off? Well, let's see. If Christmas falls on Saturday, it was our biggest day of the week. And so I was very sensitive to that. And I noticed that people with college degrees had gotten into thinking their weekends were theirs. And to us, that I didn't have a fight with that, but that wouldn't work in my industry to give them the best day off on a regular basis or something like that.
So you didn't need people who had college degrees, a motivated high school graduate who was willing to work Saturdays.
Absolutely. And what I found that by finding those people, and there were some, and some of them had some nicks on them. They'd had some problems coming up through the ranks of growing up. But we found what we looked for is someone that was energetic, sense that he was honest, and we could depend on him. Would he come to work? Our day started basically at 7 a.m. and worked through till 6 o'clock. They had their hours. No one worked those complete hours 6 days a week, but that was the day and the time and ending of days. So we had to find people that was not a negative issue to work with your hands. You were going to get dirty fooling with tires and stuff like that. So anyhow, there was a little bit of, in the interviewing process, was to look for those three things: dependability, honest, and let's see, what was third? But anyhow, you're looking for qualities that they want to improve themselves. And we found that these people, we turned them into they turned into be good managers. They had it, but they had to have the desire to do that they wanted to move up the ranks. And we had no problem with that, especially with multiple stores. We were always looking for someone that could fill in, come up through the hourly guys and become an assistant manager, for instance. There was a stepping point here. And I gave him, you got a chance to see him in management now. He had days that he was in charge of the store. Then does a good job when he's there. He's a potential manager type of guy. Yeah.
So everybody started at the bottom.
Yes.
As a tire changer, mechanic. So they saw the whole operation from the ground up.
Absolutely. Well, until you had to do that. And to some people, I grew up in North Dakota, and I worked on farms growing up. And even in college, I worked in construction business. A lot of it is blue collar type work. So I was cut out for that. I didn't really know at the time. People had made the comment to me like, "You got a degree to be in the tire business?" Well, it turned out, thank goodness, that yes, I did, and it turned out good for me. The way things turned out now that I'm retired. But the point is, there was plenty of opportunity. But I had to recognize the people that were going to make this all happen on the team. So picking the right people is very important.
And giving them a chance to move up.
Yes.
You gave people a chance to move up through the ranks to assistant manager and then manager.
That's right.
Now tell me about that, getting to be a manager.
Well, what we did is they knew, being in our program where we were sharing profits, everyone was watching these sort of things, and we'd see that the guys that understood that the deal was we're here to take care of the customer, but it had to have some fruit to our labors. We had to make some money to grow our business and to have opportunities for more stores, if you will. And that all came from the profitability of our business. So we defined what that was. And as the people, one of the issues is we didn't start them off, the management people of a store, until they showed their ability to make a certain amount of profit and grow the store consistently. They were on a first tier. The second tier and the tier that they would remain on from that point on all but doubled their percentage of the profitability. They started at 5% assistant of the profits, a manager at 10. Once we got the profitability and growth going, they moved to 8% for the assistant, 17 for the manager. And they also had to contribute some of that bonus money towards the assets of the company, which is basically our tires and equipment.
So they had to have profitable growth. That was defined as 10% annual plus one tire. None of them sold one tire. They sold 100 tires.
Yeah. It never,
but,
was
at
just
least one tire more with 10%. That qualified them for the upper tier on the profit.
On the issue of the one tire, it was amazing. If you realize you had to grow it by at least a tire, it became a secondary thought. It was growing. And at the end of the year, there's people had developed 1,000 more tires than last year. But they knew in their mind, the way they looked at the end of the day, did we grow? We knew what we did last year. Is our tires still growing?
So it wasn't arbitrary. It was defined. They could take a look at the program and say, okay, if I do this, I get that.
That's right. Yeah. That's very important. Some of these people in their career had been taken advantage of. People, gave them false hopes, possibly, at least in their mind. And nothing better, we found, than to lay it out. This is exactly what has to happen. And if that happens, here's what you get from that.
Now, there was another thing they had to do to qualify, and you mentioned it already. They had to, as you like to say, put some skin in the game.
Right.
How did that work?
So when they moved to that final tier of management, if we had $100,000 worth of tires, to pick a number, and equipment, $100,000, the manager, assistant manager, out of future bonuses, we would take a percentage of that and put it into a pot. That was for their 50%. It was their money. We paid them an interest on that, but they had skin in the pot. So what that did is it made them watch everything very closely. Because as they grew, I need more tires and I need more equipment. Well, that being said, there's a cost to that. So they would take care of their equipment better, we found, when they had some skin in the game.
So by skin in the game, to clarify, suppose a store had $200,000 in assets. We're talking about round numbers.
Right.
Between the tires, the fixtures, the inventory, not the property.
No.
But everything else, the assets of the store, they had to put up 50% of that in order to qualify for the upper tier on profit sharing. And you gave them a way to do that. That was a nice thing.
Yes.
They could build up that amount. It would be about $100,000.
That's what it would be.
And then none of them had that in their back pocket.
Very seldom, and we didn't encourage it. I mean, you could. I had people say, what if I put it all up front? Well, we kind of wanted them to try it and feel it out. Make sure this is really what they're what they thought it would be. And could they do it?
So they would build up that amount, say $100,000, and then after that they started getting more of the full profit share.
Well, what they do, and to be specific, what we did, we modified the original program we learned from the West Coast, that we took 10% of their profits. Of the manager got 17. 10% of that went into the pot, and 7% went into his pocket at the end of the year. That was a cash bonus. Here's 7. 10 remains in the company. It's your money. We're going to pay an interest, but your manager and system manager are building up their pot to equal 50% of the assets.
So he's still getting 7% at the end of the year. Plus, he's building up that 50% value of the store's assets.
That's right.
So the profit sharing plan for managers really kept them motivated. And they, as a result, kept their people motivated. Tell me about that.
Well, what happened here is something new for me. Was I didn't realize how motivated the entry-level folks could become. They had added energies that I hadn't seen before when we weren't sharing things with them. So once that happened, then the manager had to be on his best, because as someone starts really showing that he's got greater abilities and bring them to the table in a multi-store operation that we grew to, and a lot of folks would in our industry, you had to start looking for that guy to have an opportunity to continue moving up. Sometimes he moves the store. But the point was really is the manager to watch these people and make sure that their opportunities are there. And the other thing is, are they truly doing the job they've been trained to do consistently? Because if they're not, now indirectly, the people on the line, they pretty much policed each other, because it cost them money if someone was being rude to a customer or wasn't getting the work done on time. We were doing things on the line that was hurting the company. Well, I would hurt everybody. So they didn't need a manager telling that if the things were set up the way it turned out. Hey, these guys they're motivated and they have the direction, and just kind of don't fool with them, but keep an eye on them. And most of the time, keep an eye on that. They're on track. Just if they wander off, kind of in a nice way, let them know, hey, that's going to cost us something. But usually someone within the line would tell them themselves, say, Joe, what are you doing? You talked to a customer the wrong way. Or, hey, you said you'd have this done. We got to get this car off the rack at 2:00. This ain't happening. Things are moving too slow here. Let's go. And they didn't need someone at the top telling them that.
What else would you like to say about the role of the manager?
The role of the manager, that manager needs to be an example of what's expected of the crew. And the number one thing is he does what he says. When he makes a commitment to the troops, he can be relied on that'll happen. That means from what time he gets to work, what time he leaves the store. I mean, he has some latitude to make decisions. So he has to be a good example. And if he's looking for an easier trek, he's in the wrong business. He has to realize that this is a responsible job. And then by that example, he is then not feeling guilty when he asks someone to step up a little bit more.
So the managers needed to lead. They needed to set a positive example. Tell me about that.
Well, I think the time he's in the store, is he dependable? Does he come to work when everyone expects him? Would be one of the issues. Another was his appearance. We found in our industry, and it still goes on, is a lot of people are going, they didn't shave in the morning, they don't button up their shirt. I mean, they don't look good, and he has to exemplify that. Part of that I learned in the Marine Corps too, is the officers expected that.
Yeah, the Marines like to have a certain look.
That's right. So I've been I get everyone's thought. So well, the old man's a Marine, so he's going to have certain things. But I found that was good for them and for the customer. You want to see someone that looked good. If he looks whatever, it will he take care of my car the way he looks? If he looks bad, well, I'm not sure he'll, anyhow, maybe taking that too far, but anyhow. So that is very important. So his habits, how he speaks to them, versus, he's got to be a leader, but he can also do the job himself a lot of times. And when something extra comes along, that he jumps in and helps out. When I first started observing the company on the West Coast, I couldn't figure out who this manager was when they were busy. Like, he was just, He was moving and plugging in wherever they needed some extra help. He wasn't saying, "Hey, I'm the manager and I can sit over here and smoke cigarettes." No, his whole job was to get that customer taken care of and would fill in. And so that's another role of the manager is, well, is he willing? And he doesn't have to be the mechanic. I wasn't mechanical myself, but I could surely talk to the customer. I could change tires a lot. I could do balancing and things like that, move cars in and out.
So the managers had an enormous part in the profitability of the company. They were the face of the company to many of the customers.
Yes.
They had to keep the employees motivated. They had to have a good attitude. Tell me about that.
Well, I think it always starts there because you're going, what's really expected of me? Well, if the boss himself is eating and sleeping the job, you can just see, man, he's in this. He believes in it. So that shows up in his actions and his appearance, how he talks to these people. A lot of them, grow up in this here. If they start off, got a few nicks on them, used to people kind of talking down to them. That isn't the role. The role is they're part of the team, and I have to show that I will be and treat them with full respect. And if they're not doing their job, let them know. And we would do things as manager. I never disciplined people in front of other people. If I had a problem with an employee, I took them out personally. I did it over the phone. That was a one-on-one deal. If you're going to have a meeting about some problems, let's do that privately. If it's a group meeting, that's one thing. But when you have an individual, that's a problem. A manager has to deal with that. How he deals with that depends on, will make or break the organization, I think.
And so the manager also had to be trustworthy and reliable in the eyes of the customer.
Yes, always. Yeah. If they felt anything was little, well, we'll figure our way around a problem with this customer by giving them something that's not truthful, that just goes right into the company. So that's just one issue. Well, if you'll do that, maybe we can do this. No. We're going to be straight up with the customer. So, and then that same thing is we're going to do that with our employees. As manager, we're going to be consistent about doing the right thing.
You've been listening to Profit Sharing in the Real World. Dick Erickson's book of the same name is available at Amazon.com. If you have a question for Dick to address in a future episode, or if you have a story about how you've seen profit sharing work in the real world, please send an email to me, Danny Murphy. The email address is danny@successstory.biz. That's success story spelled out .biz. Thank you for listening.